Hello, all. We are live, I think. You guys let me know. Whoever is crazy enough to tune into this live show after what we just witnessed, which was Michigan demolishing Rutgers 101-60 in Ann Arbor. Let me know how the sound is. Let me know how I look. Let me know all the usual stuff. Everything should be good. But anyway, let me know how it is. So yes, Rutgers loses to Michigan 101-60. It is the biggest blowout of the Steve Pikiell era, surpassing a couple of 35-point losses to Illinois and Purdue. And I think this Michigan team is as good as any of the best Illinois and Purdue teams of the recent years. This is the third straight game they score 100 points. This is the fourth straight game they beat a team by 30 or more points. This team has a chance of being, a national title contender, one of the best teams in the Big Ten, certainly a Big Ten title contender, elite team. That being said, Rutgers was just completely demolished in every single way. The stats are kind of jarring here. Michigan scored 52 points in the paint. Rutgers scored 60 points in general. Michigan had 25 made field goals at the rim. Rutgers had 24 made field goals in general. Michigan had 26 assists. Rutgers had 24 made field goals. So complete domination. It's hard to get beat worse than that. This is similar to the way a good team plays against a low major team. Like, this is what you wanted to see Rutgers do to Rider and American and Maine and Lehigh, and instead Rutgers is having that done to them by Michigan, which shows just the enormous difference Rutgers has to the top of the Big Ten. And again, Rutgers has had a stinker like this probably once a year over the last 5 or 6 years. It happened against Illinois. It happened against Purdue, like I mentioned a couple times. Last year they had a stinker. Even the 21-22 season, they lost by 35 at Illinois, and then they returned home and beat Purdue. I didn't remember that being the chronology there, but I think it's safe to say that this team is not going to do that. Steve Pikiell went 13 deep in his rotation. He let Bay fall on the court as long as he could survive, which was 10 minutes before he got his fifth foul. And there was really no positives outside of maybe a little bit of Harun Zerno, who was in the starting lineup for the first time this season and put up, a decent stat line. He had 13 points on 5 of 10 shooting, but he made 5 of his first 7 shots. Tariq Francis came off the bench for the first time. He had a decent stat line, but Caden Powers, 5 of 16. You can't say the kid doesn't like to shoot. I won't go player by player and do the grades like I usually do. There's just no point. It's certainly hard to talk about this game at all, just because outside of the obvious fact that, Rutgers was obliterated, and how that is a horrible sign going forward. And especially because you're playing Seton Hall next week at Seton Hall after they go on the road at Kansas State, which is not as good as it's been under Jerome Tang, but you still go on the road and win double digits at Kansas State. You have a great showing in Maui, and now you're going to host Rutgers. That has a chance of getting really, really ugly. And then after the Penn and Delaware State bye games, which Rutgers should win those games, now you're going into the meat of your Big Ten schedule with, it's hard not to get too, let's not base what we expect out of Rutgers in Big Ten play off of their results against the 2 best teams in the league. I still think it would be hard for them to find more than 4 wins. This is, I said in the summer that the worst case scenario is this gets Seton Hall bad. Last year, Seton Hall won 7 games. It can get Seton Hall bad this year in a hurry for Rutgers. This is rough. Let me go through some questions now. Mike Broadbent of the Night Report podcast. Mike, thanks for tuning in. How many more stairs does this team fall down before we hit the basement this year? As far as like results wise, it's hard to. I can't imagine Rutgers will lose a game more thoroughly than they did today. It's almost impossible. Michigan called off the dogs and threw in their walk-ons at 5 minutes left, and they're getting to the rim at ease, getting to the free throw line. Trey McKinney, who apparently was between Rutgers and Michigan, and Rutgers was in that race with Smoke Williamson. Has a kid made a greater decision in his life going to Michigan and being a part of a rotation player of a team this dominant than if he was on this Rutgers team? He'd be maybe the only above, average player, even like, so that was one thing that stuck out to me. I think it could get worse. Losing, but you were expected to lose these games, maybe not by that much margin, but you're expected to lose these games. The concern to me is when you host Penn at the end of the month, if that's a game, or if Penn upsets them, that's rock bottom. Or if you go to Seton Hall next week and Seton Hall wins by 25, 30 points, which I don't put out of the question. I mean, they have some really good talent. They have inside. They have a point guard that dominated Rutgers last year at Merrimack with that talent. Imagine what he could do with Seton Hall's talent. You got Shaheen Holloway, who's going to want to build up some style points for this team to create an NCAA tournament resume. And it's a game Seton Hall can't lose. So I think that the next two games are really where things could get rock bottom, because once you get into Big Ten play, if you lose, we expect them to lose 15 games, right? So unless they go winless in the Big Ten or win two games, it's hard to go lower than the expectations at this point. Inacio says, didn't see the game. Holy crap, what a complete train wreck. Yeah, I mean, this was worst case scenario against Michigan. They got steamrolled badly. The thing is, you're expected to lose these games. To lose them in this fashion and this thoroughly only creates, puts eyeballs on this game from the national media and national fans outside of Piscataway and Ann Arbor, because most college basketball fans aren't tuning into what Michigan does, even if they are a top 5 team. But when they win by 40, that's what gets people's attention, and it gets more people wondering what the hell is wrong with Rutgers after they, bombed last year. They're even worse this year. It's not good for. I mean, not that it matters in the grand scheme of things, but it's just the 100th thing on the list of bad things around this program you don't really want people outside of Piscataway to notice, because that's when pressure builds up even more. Linda Conroy says, I thought we were already in the basement. As I said, Linda, it probably won't get worse, but it certainly can. Next week will be a big challenge in that. Like, next week is the week where things can get really, really bad. That was certainly a basketball game. Yes, it was cutting up sports, and I think that it was a waste of time for all of us, frankly. I see the Barcelona in your picture on YouTube. I'm not a big Barcelona fan myself, but big win today over Betis, so congratulations. Inacio, we are already in the basement, unbeknownst to all, because this team is not moving out of the basement this entire season. Well, I'll use that as a jumping off point to say that I don't see much there's not much potential here, right? Like, I don't see many silver linings, any one player that can kind of, get significantly better as the season goes on and elevate the floor of this team. There's just not much talent on this team. Dylan Grant is doing what he can, but he can't do it alone. The center position is an abject disaster, as we have said ad nauseum. There are no players that can create by themselves. There are no shooters really. Like Caden Powers, again, as I said, has the mindset to be a scorer. 5 of 16. It's crazy that a guy took 16 shots. But I guess at this point, the game kind of gets out of hand. But I mean, Caden Powers is Lathan Somerville-esque in the way that if he gets the ball, he's putting it up. Pike Rob, the thing that really gets me is that Pikiell would constantly complain about lack of size and experience last season. Yet 3 of his guards are 6'2" or shorter and brought in 7 freshmen. The height or lack thereof in the backcourt has been an issue all season. It's something we kind of sounded the alarms on in the preseason, and it's bearing fruit because these guys cannot guard Big Ten guards. I mean, today was obvious, right? You can have a 5'11", 6-foot guard if he's Braden Smith, and you can hide him on defense with elite centers like Oscar Clough and Trey Kaufman-Renn, like Purdue does. And especially whatever he doesn't give you defensively, he makes up for with being maybe the best point guard in college basketball. The guards that Rutgers has offer none of that, right? Like, none of them are above average defenders. Certainly not to exceed the gap between their skills and their height. And none of them are offensively above or even average, right? Tariq Francis had a decent game today, but again, most of those points came well after the game was decided. So yeah, the backcourt is going to be a big issue. The front court is going to be a big issue. Essentially, the entire roster is going to be a big issue. Again, Steve Pikiell played 13 guys. There's no magic solution here. This roster is what it is. And again, it's one thing to not be as good as the top teams, right? Steve Pikiell has never had, a top 5 roster in the Big Ten. But at its best, they would compete against these teams, put a scare into these teams, and outside of the one anomaly per year, they wouldn't lose these games by 40 points. But they're getting thoroughly outplayed in all these games against the top teams. That's not a good sign, because the teams might get a little worse as the season goes on and you get into Big Ten play, but Rutgers is not getting any better. So maybe you won't lose by 40, but it's hard to see this team not lose by, 10, 15 points every night in the Big Ten, outside of games against Penn State. And I mean, even Minnesota beat Indiana. So another team that was supposed to be bad this season has some upside with a really good coach in Nico Medved. Have no clue. Inacio says, have no clue how Seton Hall is this year. I'm expecting us to lose by 25 points. Seton Hall is good. They're 9-1, and they had 7 wins all of last season. The one loss they had was a bit of a ref job against the USC, and they're playing really well. They beat a ranked NC State team. They just beat a Kansas State team on the road. They beat Washington State in Maui, where they went 2-1. They're playing really well. Their freshman center, Najee Hines from Plainfield, is playing incredibly. Bud Clark again is a great point guard, lead guard, and they've hit on almost all of the transfers. All of these guys are contributing and playing at a high level, and they're playing very hard defensively. They're playing Shaheen Holloway basketball. They're deep. They rotate. I mean, Seton Hall is the real deal. If you want a beacon of light, look at what Seton Hall did this offseason in flipping its roster. That if you want any hope beyond this season, that's the model, is following what Seton Hall did. I'm not counting out Fran McCaffrey. RU Penn is must-see TV. Kevin Fine says, I agree. That should be a good game. And Fran McCaffrey, albeit with much more talent at Iowa, has coached circles around Steve Pikiell in the past. So certainly I think they have a puncher's chance. Penn isn't exactly the best team in the Ivy, but again, Rutgers isn't exactly the best team in the Big Ten. Alec W asks, is 0-20 possible? It's possible. I'd say it's highly unlikely. I mean, you're bound to trip into a win in the Big Ten. I mean, Rutgers is, Penn State, probably comparable to Penn State. They played them twice. If you get swept by this Penn State team and you go 0-20, you got to, blow the whole thing up and start from scratch. But I think they'll scratch 1, 2, 3 wins at least. It happens in the Big Ten. I mean, Indiana is better than Minnesota. They lost on the road to Minnesota. Even Eddie Jordan's worst team got 1 win, albeit against a Minnesota team destroyed by suspensions, but still. RU Hoop Project says the ship be sunk. Yeah, I mean, look, the season's been over since they lost to Central Connecticut State. But again, this is more about perception. These results are more about perception. And it's going to be interesting to see the reaction when Rutgers does get back to the rack, because people have shown up. Even the Purdue game, people showed up. Are people going to stop showing up? That to me is the first sign of things really getting out of hand. Matt Casey asks, is it bad? I'm hoping we lose the rest of the slate so that we can get rid of Pikiell. What is the likelihood he's gone if it keeps going off the rails? Again, if they go 0-20, if they go 2 of 18, if they lose 5, 6 more games the way they got dominated by Purdue and Michigan, 30, 40-point losses, ultimately there's no direct thing. Like there's no like threshold that must be beat. I think to me the key is, will it get bad enough that it's untenable and that someone with money steps up and says, I don't care how much it costs to change. Here's the money, flip it over, start something new. That is what matters. Is Rutgers going to be able to come up with the money? Them coming up with the money will be almost certainly through a private donation, because this is not the athletic department flush with cash. And again, they have to spend money on NIL, and a lot of it. There's just it's financially infeasible to fire him unless a major donor comes up with the $20 million, or B, or maybe not the $20 million, because he would get paid yearly throughout the rest of his contract, but you'd have to have a lot of money to pay through. Or B, it becomes so untenable. People stop showing up to the rack. People stop watching the program. The heat is just intensified, and they foresee a major loss in revenue next year. Season ticket numbers are down this year. If they continue to be threatened to be lowered, if people stop showing up, and it costs more money to have a half-empty rack than it does to change the coaching staff, that is where the rubber meets the road. Essentially, it's when, as always, it's the money is what matters. And when it makes more financial sense to change than it does to stay, that to me is when things will change. Is it bad? Everyone is a fan in their own way. This team is not going to do anything this year, right? So I'm not going to blame a fan for hoping that things get worse so that they can get better quickly. To each their own. Let's see. Before the game, Powers is shooting 11% from the floor. Terrible. I mean, he's not taking great shots. He's forcing a lot of things up, but it's not like this offense is generating great looks for anyone. I don't think it's advisable for him to take whatever shots he wants, but I mean, I think it's the product of one, a guy who has rarely played trying to make the most of his opportunities, and two, kind of it being what it is. I mean, is it that much worse than other shots generated in this offense? Not that much. Um, Matt Casey adds, this would be unacceptable at 99% of other institutions. I don't care about the goodwill he's bought in the past. It's been several years since we've sniffed the tournament. Enough is enough. The goodwill he's bought in the past is gone. All the cachet he's built was evaporated the second Rutgers didn't make the NCAA tournament with with Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey. That's gone. They're essentially starting a new slate. And again, I think it's very clear that the financial feasibility of this, the enormous contract he and Brandon Knight were gifted by Pat Hobbs, is a major roadblock in making change for those that do. Like it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money for most programs. It's a lot of money for Rutgers. And I know we see a lot of programs around the country splashing money around to fire coaches. I am of the belief that it's financially infeasible until it gets really, 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 really bad. And I think that barring something unforeseeable, he will have another year at least with more NIL backing. You know, much like Greg Schiano will have a bigger NIL war chest to work with this offseason, Steve Pikiell and the basketball program will have the same thing next offseason. One, thankfully, thanks to Kelly Zinn and her administration, and in an ideal world, thanks to Rob Sullivan, the new GM, whatever he's able to put together during the season as well. Again, I hate that all of our post games kind of devolve into that, but there's really not much basketball to talk about after this game, so that's where things are headed. HJG says, stop, we have NIL. Rutgers does not have a competitive NIL war chest, certainly not to Michigan's level. I mean, Yaxel from Michigan is making almost as much money as the entire Rutgers roster. But to this point, Rutgers did not optimally use the NIL money it did have. I mean, this is not a good roster. It should be a better roster. I mean, there's no doubt about that. The money was not used optimally. The roster was not built well. And that is a major thing that one can pin, on Steve Pikiell and the staff, is that they did not maximize the money they did have to work with. Just because you don't have a lot of money to work with doesn't mean you can't do better than this. It should be better. I mean, the lack of money does not excuse it being this bad. And I think that it's clear that when Rutgers got a general manager whose primary focus will be raising money, and he will have, from all we understand from his job description, from what we've been told, will have no factor or little factor in basketball decisions, in building a roster, in finding a players that fit the mold of what this program wants. It's clear that Steve Pikiell is steadfast in that he knows what he needs for this roster, for his rosters, for his basketball program on the floor. And I think that the early results for this season are that there needs to be a different set of eyes, because the results so far have not been great. Trying to go through any more comments. Mr. Tate, Mr. Zinn, what do you think of this? It will be interesting to discuss that with them after the season. I think that the athletic director and president almost never comment on jobs, but certainly not during the season. It will be interesting to see if Kelly Zinn's decision on whether or not to talk, how she talks about either of these coaches, Greg Schiano or Steve Pikiell, when she next talks publicly. Indiana or Ohio State. I think Ohio State's the better team, and I think they're probably going to win. I would like to see Indiana win because it'd be a cool story. Crazy how Dusty May completely flipped Michigan overnight. Michigan was as bad as Rutgers 2 years ago. Yes, absolutely. Jack Bisaha, former Daily Targum writer, longtime Rutgers observer, smart mind. Appreciate you tuning in. I think Dusty May is one of the best coaches in the country. I think he not only has a great roster, but he has them playing incredibly well. I think we have to also acknowledge that they had a lot of money to work with to get Yaxel, Adai Mara, to keep Burnett, to get Trey McKinney. Like they have dudes on this roster. They have an elite roster. One, because Dusty May knows what he wants. Two, because Dusty May is a coach that players believe in because of what he's done at Florida Atlantic, and he's proven himself to be an elite coach. And three, because they had a lot of money. So when you have all those factors together, that's when you have an elite team. Does Seton Hall have massive NIL funds this offseason? No, more than Rutgers, though. Seton Hall is not a football school. They can allocate their revenue revenue share sources to basketball. The bad season last year helped Shaheen really push the administration to give them more funds. And with the bigger purse to work with, Shaheen built a much better roster. And it helped that he knew what he didn't want after last season, knew what he wanted, had more money to work with, and that ultimately and I think Shaheen Holloway is a really, really good coach. I mean, you don't take Seton Hall or St. Peter's to the Elite Eight if you're not an elite coach yourself. So I thought last year was not representative of Shaheen Holloway. And now that he has a good roster, I think you see what Shaheen Holloway could do. And he showed that the year before when he took them to the NIT and probably got snubbed to the NCAAs. If you give Shaheen Holloway dudes, he's going to make a really good team. RU Hoop Project, the GM is shared with the women's program, which is more evidence that RU is not serious. Yeah, I mean, that's another sign, right? Yeah, that's not – once that is part of his job responsibility. And again, the primary job responsibility is raising money. I think that kind of speaks for itself. Cutting Up Sports says, to be clear, I'm not a Rutgers fan, so I do not understand the situation, but I was rather surprised Pike was retained after missing the tournament with Harper and Bailey last year. Again, two factors there. He built a lot of goodwill by becoming the first coach at Rutgers to take them to the NCAA tournament in 30 years. And two, well, three factors. Like two, there is the idea that he didn't have a lot of money to work with NIL-wise to build a roster around Dylan and Ace Bailey. One can debate the merits of that as they want, but that's certainly an argument. And three, his contract is enormous. Rutgers does not have a lot of money, so it's, again, not financially feasible for that to happen. But certainly, again, it erased all of his goodwill, all of his cachet, and now he's really on the back heel and fighting against time to turn this thing around because it's on a steep downward fall. Goldie Law says, does NIL even matter in helping turn this around? It's been 2 years now where Pike has missed on portal targets and even the freshman class. The issue goes beyond funding, coaching, roster building, etc. Well, okay, so these things are impossible to quantify, right? But I think we could all agree if you have more NIL to work with and you could outbid other teams for players, then that makes things easier. That doesn't mean you win the recruiting battle every time. And there is a factor here of who the coach is, how they want to play, and all these things come together that influence a player. But you have to have the money to be in it for players. And Rutgers has not been in it for most players it's targeted because it just doesn't have the money in the same ballpark, right? So does NIL matter? Yes. Will raising the budget of this program twice, even if you double the budget of this program or even triple it, will that guarantee that things turn around under Steve Pikiell? No, it doesn't. But it certainly gives him a much better chance of doing so. Again, we can argue the merits of whether or not we think Steve Pikiell with a bigger budget would be able to have Rutgers back to where it was, at its peak under him. But I think it's inarguable that having more money gives you a better chance of getting better players, and having better players gives you a chance at being a better team. Project 52 says, who's getting paid to play basketball on this team? Every player on the roster. It is the NIL era. I watched some great games before today's game, and it's like someone said last week, it really looks like Rutgers is playing a different game on the hardwood. Yeah, I mean, Rutgers looked like a JV team against the varsity team today. I mean, that's and against Purdue, frankly. So Matt Casey says, I think no matter what amount of money you give Pikiell, he does not know how to compile a competitive team with the portal. His offensive sets are archaic, and he's shown zero willingness to change. Again, we could I think that's a very fair opinion to have. I think no one will argue with you that the offense this team runs is archaic. They take way too many mid-range jump shots. They don't create any open threes, or they rarely create open threes. There's no real intention. A vast majority of offensive possessions are a guard getting the ball and either driving to the rim and scoring, driving to the rim and creating a shot. But it's isolation heavy, and there's really no creativity. No one will argue with that. And that certainly sets a ceiling because recruits look at that stuff, and yes, you can probably pay a lot of kids enough money that they'll play anywhere. But if it's a 50-50 proposition and they weigh their role on on the floor, this is not exactly a place that's going to showcase someone's offensive skill set or be a high-powered offense, unless you're a guy like Dylan Harper who can score no matter what offense you're in, or if you're a guy who wants to take 100 shots a game and you don't care if the team plays well offensively as long as you get your shots. So look, I think it's a fair opinion to have. I think the crux of this offseason upcoming will be if the administration is able to give Steve Pikiell the money, and then what he's able to do with it the following year will in some way dictate or answer that question. Because right now what we're talking about is a hypothetical. And I think the idea is that next year, if all goes to plan in the offseason, we'll have an answer to this hypothetical next winter. NIL helps every situation. You have to spend it right, but it helps. Yes, absolutely. Proper roster building is this coaching staff's kryptonite for years now. Yes, since the golden era of the Steve Pikiell era, I guess we'll say, they've missed out on a lot of recruits in high school. They've missed out on a lot of portal targets. For every Cam Spencer, there are 4 or 5 Noah Fernandezes. For every Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey, there is a Derek Simpson and a Antonio Chol, and Antoine Wolfolk has actually been doing pretty good at Miami of Ohio. I'm just struggling to come up with names now, but Gavin Griffiths, obviously, the Gavin Griffiths being the anti-Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey. Goldie Law says, sorry, this is a response to someone else's comment. Thank you, Cutting Up Sports, for your appreciation of me hosting this. It's kind of part of the job. All right. Well, do you guys have any other comments or questions about this game? We're running a little long here, and going to try to have some dinner soon, but there's not much more else to say about this game. You guys can feel free to subscribe to our channel, like this video. Steve Pikiell and I will have a podcast on Monday to discuss basketball, to discuss football, the recent firing of Rob Smith. We haven't talked about that yet, but we'll talk about that Monday. We'll talk about everything around Rutgers. It's been an interesting week. But yes, unless you guys have anything last second, that'll be it. Thank you all for tuning in. A lot of you tuned in, more than I expected. Hopefully this helped you guys, express some frustration, get your feelings out. Thank you for participating in the live chat. I will talk to you guys soon. Thanks again. Bye.